Hey everyone, and welcome to another one of our videos. Today I'm going to be doing the oil change on my 2012 Mercedes S550. This has the Mercedes M278 engine in it, and this is just going to be a simple oil and filter change. Now there's a couple things that I do a little bit differently, and a couple things that I want to mention. First thing that I want to mention is the oil filter. On the earlier M278 engines, there are two possible oil filters that you might have. There's one with a 276 part number, and there's also one with a 278 part number. The 276 being the sister engine, the V6, to the M278. So there was a mixed installation of filters. There are conflicting reports as to whether or not there's a VIN cutoff or an engine number cutoff. Online I wasn't able to find any definitive information easily. So what I recommend doing is before you buy an oil filter to do your oil change yourself, pull the old oil filter out really quickly. It's super easy to get to and really easy to do. It took me 5 minutes. And look at the part number on the filter. So figure out what oil filter you need from that in an order accordingly. In my case, I had the 276 part number, which corresponds to PureFlux L394 filter. So that's what I purchased. Comes with the gaskets, the O-rings, everything's good to go there. In addition to that, I'm going to be using Castrol Edge 0W40 full synthetic European formula Mercedes meets Mercedes spec oil. You're going to need 8 quarts and change of that. Not sure exactly how much I'm going to have to fill up, because one of the things that I'm doing a little bit differently is using Liquimala Ceratec in this engine. So I do this also in my W140 S-Class as well as some of my other German cars. I fill the engines periodically or on periodic oil changes, put Liquimala Ceratec oil additive into them. What this stuff does is essentially it's a friction modifier, and if you want to think of it like this, and it sounds kind of odd, but think of it kind of like a ceramic coating for the inside of your engine. It helps reduce friction on some of the wear points. I've noticed it reduce noise significantly, like lifter tick noise and things like that in my W140 S-Class. So I feel that it's not a horrible idea to put in this engine because of the timing chain oiling issues that this engine is known to have. So there's a TSB on these engines for check valves to be installed for the timing chain oiling system, and the timing chain tensioners and guides and everything are known to be not horrible, but a little bit off on some of these. So I want to go ahead and put this in just as a preventative measure. It's not horribly expensive. I buy it by the case, so it's really not terrible in terms of price. So I'm going to put that in as well. Not saying that you should, not saying that you shouldn't. That's just my preference. In addition to that, you're going to need an oil filter housing socket. This one's from Hazit. This is actually an M114 part number for my W140, and it happens to fit this engine also. Mercedes oil filter housings are pretty standard. And then I also have a little bit of a different funnel that I like to use on all of my cars now, but it's really helpful on some of the German ones that have a little bit of a restricted passageway whenever you're pouring oil down in. So if you use a normal funnel, you can, if you pour oil too fast, overflow over the oil filler and spill oil everywhere. This actually has little cap adapters that screw in like a cap where your oil cap would normally go, and this funnel goes into them, and you're able to just dump as much oil as you want, fills up in the funnel, and then it drains down into the engine. Makes for a little bit more of a spill-proof oil change. So outside of that, the last thing I want to mention is that I'm not going to be doing an oil change where I'm pulling the plug and draining the oil out of the pan. I use an oil extractor for most of my maintenance oil changes, and every once in a while I will pull the plug, replace the cross washer, and drain the pan that way. But the majority of my oil changes on all my vehicles, I do the oil extraction. So it's going to vary a little bit from other oil changes, but this will get you the basics. So I'm going to go ahead, go over to the car, start extracting the oil, show you that setup a little bit, and then we'll move on from there. All right, so you can see on the left-hand side of the engine right over here, I have the oil extraction going. Just got the tube going down to the dipstick tube. It's pulling the oil out right now. The extractor that I have is from a company called Pella. I'll link it in the YouTube description or some equivalent options, just in case you're interested in doing the same type of thing that I'm doing. At this point, while it's pulling the oil out, I'm ready to change the oil filter. You can see the housing right down here. All you need to do is pull this little section of the engine cover off and out of the way in order to access the housing. And then all you'll do is take the filter wrench, put it over the housing and crank it off. So I'll go ahead and do that, show you that in a second, and then we'll move on from there. All right, so like I said, while the oil is coming out, I'm going to go ahead and pull the oil filter housing out and everything and change that guy. So, see, I got the socket on an extension, on a ratchet. Go ahead and crack this loose. And then, once everything is loosened up, I can go ahead and bring a little pan over here to be able to transfer this into, pull the socket off, and pull the oil filter and housing out of the engine. Let it drip, drip, drip into the cup on the engine, and then goes into my tray. So I'm going to take that off to the side, swap the filter out, swap the O-ring out. I'll point those out here in just a second so you can see what I'm talking about. And then everything will go back in, and we'll finish up the oil change. Should be pretty darn simple. All right, so we're here with my tray on the bench, and we're ready to replace the filter and the filter housing. So this is the filter portion right here, filter housing. We have an O-ring to replace. It's pretty simple. One thing I want to mention about the filter, like I said earlier, this is Pure Flux part number L394 for my particular application. This is a fleece filter. With the vehicles that I have that were factory equipped with the fleece style filters, I don't like to replace them with paper style. You can get like a Mon filter that will fit this, but they don't, I believe, make a fleece one that fits this application. So didn't do that. Went with the OEM, not an OE filter. It's not branded Mercedes, but this Pure Flux is the original manufacturer of these ones, from my understanding. So really easy to change the filter and the O-ring. I'm going to start with the filter itself. It just should pop right out, just like that. There's a little retainer clip in there. And then the O-ring, once I wipe my hand off a little bit, will just come out like so, using a little O-ring pick. So that's off. Set the filter housing down. Got some oil on my hands. I'm going to go ahead and put that on the new O-ring. That can go on the housing, right there in the groove. I don't like to roll the O-rings over because they can get bound up a little bit. I like to stretch them over as much as possible without overstretching them. They'll shrink back down pretty quickly and easily. And then at this point, we're ready to put on the new filter. So, got the new one right there. And we just squeeze it on into place. There we go. Done's done. That is ready to go back into the car. So, I'm going to go ahead, reinstall this. Installation is reverse of disassembly for this one. Really, really simple. And we will move on now to the rest of the oil change. All right, so I have the oil filter housing with the new filter and everything threaded back into place. Torque to spec, 25 Newton meters, which is about 18.5 foot-pounds. And we're done in this section of the engine now. So I can go ahead, throw that engine cover back into place. Snaps down nice and easily. 1, 2, 3. One up front, 2 in the back. And at this point, I'm going to sit here and wait for the rest of the oil to be extracted. So it's really, really quick and easy to do the filter change. I'm only about 5 quarts, 4.5 quarts, somewhere around there, extracted out of the engine right now. So I got a little bit of time to wait. Go ahead and do that. And I'll come back once I've got all the engine oil pulled out and we're ready to fill it up. All right, we're ready to fill up the engine with oil now. I finished draining. I did leave the dipstick out just so I can check the engine oil level a little bit more easily once I filled it. But we're ready to fill the engine with oil now. So in order to do that, I like to pull off the oil cap. I'm going to go ahead and set that aside. And you can also remove this engine cover just to get a better view of what you're doing and to allow a funnel to fit if you have a bigger one or something like that. Or if you just want to clean up a little of the mess under there, which is what I want to do once I fill this guy up. So, in order to fill it, you need, in my case, using the funnel that I'm using, the correct adapter. If you have the same kit, and I'll link this funnel kit in the description below, in case you're interested in this, it's actually the Volkswagen Audi adapter. It happens to fit Mercedes too. Go ahead and quarter turn it into place, and then at this point, you take the bottom little cap off of the funnel. It just pops off. And then you stick the funnel down into place. And voila, you have a wonderfully sealed oil filling mechanism there. So you can dump oil in as fast as you want. What I'm going to do is go ahead and dump the Liqui-Moly Ceratec in here. That's going to go in first, and I'm going to dump 5 quarts in and see where we're at, see if we're even registering on the dipstick, and I'll go from there. All right, as you can see, oil change is done. One thing that I want to mention as far as filling procedure goes, what you're going to want to do, if you're adding an additive or something, you can go ahead and dump that in to start with, and you're going to want to fill up the engine with 5, 6, a little bit of oil, enough to register just on the tip of the dipstick. Go ahead and start it up so it fills up your oil filter and everything, and then take the car for a drive as long as you've filled it up with a reasonable amount of oil. Very short drive, like around the block or in the neighborhood, something like that. Bring it back into the garage, let it sit for 5 minutes, check your oil level, and fill as necessary. If you need to repeat that process a couple times while you're filling, you can go ahead and do that. But you want to make sure that you get the oil level right, and the right way to do it is to check the oil whenever it's warm or hot, and after letting the car sit for 5 minutes after driving. So that's per the Mercedes manual. Other than that, reasonably simple oil change. Oil filter is nice and accessible. Oil fill is nice and accessible. Dipstick's nice and accessible. So it's easy to pull the oil out and put new oil in. With that, I want to thank you all for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.